Hi everyone! Today I thought it would be a great idea to share some of my favorite Asian recipes with you. If you're new here or if you haven't figured it out already, we absolutely love our Asian food. Whether it's Chinese inspired, whether it's Thai style, whether it is Japanese, we love it all. And today I'm going to share with you some of my favorite recipes that we absolutely enjoy and that are fairly regular in our meal rotation. And I hope you enjoy them too. For the first recipe today, we're making rice paper tteokbokki. Tteokbokki is a beautiful Korean dish and usually uses rice cakes, but today I'm going to show you how to make a cheat version using rice paper, which is much easier to find. We're going to start by prepping some of our veggies and add-ins. We're making this a vegan version today, so I'm starting off by using a few of these deep-fried soy puffs. You don't need very many, but they add a nice variety and texture to the dish. So the larger ones I'm just going to cut in half. These will swell up when they're steeped in the stew. I'm going to use half an onion today. And all I'm going to do is trim the edges and I'm going to slice this up. You don't want very thin slices. You want the onion to have a little bit of bite after it's cooked. Next, we're going to use some broccoli. I'm going to trim out some of these florets. You can use as much or as little as you'd like. And you're also going to need one spring onion. Now the spring onion, I'm going to cut this up a little differently. I'm going to cut them into pieces that are about 2 inches long, and the white and the light green portions, I like to split them into halves like this. And we're going to cut the green portion into about 1.5 inches or 2-inch pieces as well. Next, we're going to start working on the sauce. For this, I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of sugar to a bowl. You're going to need 1 tablespoon of gochujang, which is a fermented chili paste. You can find this easily at all Asian supermarkets, as well as your mainstream supermarkets like Coles and Woolies also carry this now. Add in 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. And we're also going to add in some Korean red pepper flakes. I found this at my local Asian grocery store. I'm just going to use about half a teaspoon or so of these red pepper flakes. Stir everything through to mix it up well. And set this aside for now. We're going to move on to our rice paper rolls. I'm actually going to make 2 different types of these little rolls using rice paper sheets today. You get rice paper sheets in a bunch of different sizes. You get them in circles like this. You also get the square ones. Just use whatever you have access to. For the first variety, we're just going to make some plain little rice cakes. In this plate, I've just got some tepid water. This is just a little bit above room temperature. You don't want very hot water. And you're going to dip the rice paper sheet in the water to make it more pliable. And you're going to repeat this process with a second sheet of rice paper. Place the second sheet right over the first one and just flatten them out to get rid of any air bubbles and to make sure they adhere. And then you're going to roll this into a tight log, starting from one end, and work your way up. What you'll end up with is a little log like this, and you're going to set that aside for now and continue this process. For 2 adult-sized portions, I usually make up about 3 to 4 of these logs. With those done, the second type of rice cake that I'm going to make today is one that's stuffed with cheese. I found some vegan cheese slices at Aldi on my recent shop, and that's what I'm going to use today. All I'm doing is cutting this into little strips like you can see here. For the cheese-filled rice cakes, I'm just going to use a single sheet of rice paper. We're going to moisten it with some water to make it more pliable. And we're going to place about 2 or 3 strips of the cheese a little lower down on the roll. And tucking one end in, we're going to roll that rice paper sheet around the cheese. Try and keep this as tight as possible. After you've gone for about 3 to 4 rolls, fold in the sides. This is to ensure the cheese doesn't ooze out during the cooking process, and continue rolling till you reach the end of your rice paper sheet. This is what they look like when they're completely done. Whip up a few of those and set them aside. Once you're done rolling up all of your little rice paper sheet rice cakes, cut the long ones up into about 4 pieces. I find that this size is the most manageable and yields the best texture. I would recommend making these rice paper rolls when you're ready to start cooking. Don't make these in advance. To start the cooking process, I'm going to use a big packet of some of this super spicy Korean noodles that I've got here. You can use any ramen noodles of your choice. If you're using a smaller pack, you'll probably need to use 2 cakes of noodles or 2 packs of noodles to serve 2 people. By pouring about half a liter of water or 500 milliliters into a large pan. And this particular brand of noodles has a soup base and a spicy mix included in the pack itself. So I'm just going to add that to the water. If the noodles that you're using don't have something like this, start off with 2 cups or 500 milliliters of stock of your choice. Add the tteokbokki sauce that we had prepared earlier and stir that through really well. Next, add the noodles into the pan, and we're going to add the sliced onion to the pan. Just make sure to separate the layers of those slices before you add them in. Next, you're going to add in the white and the light green portion of the spring onion that we chopped up earlier. And you're going to cook this for a couple of minutes. Now, my packet of noodles recommends 4 minutes of total cooking time, 4 to 4.5 minutes, or until they're done. I'm going to let this cook on a medium heat for about 2 minutes to begin with, and we'll then add a few more things to the pan. While the noodles are cooking, I like to loosen the cake of noodles up a little bit every once in a while, just to make sure everything is well submerged in that beautiful flavorful stock. When you've got about a couple of minutes left in the cooking process, add in those broccoli florets and the soy puffs. And at this stage, I'm going to add the rest of the green onions to the pan. Let this cook down for about another minute or so. Just remember to stir every once in a while. And when the noodles are almost ready, you're going to add in those rice paper rolls or rice paper cakes, whatever you want to call them. You're going to add them to the pan. I place them all through the broth so that they don't stick to each other. And very gently, we're going to move things around and make sure that these rice cakes are submerged in that stock. Once you've added these rice cakes in, you're only going to let this cook for about another 30 seconds or so, or until those rice paper cakes have heated through. Cooking this any longer than that will make them very gluggy, very chewy, and not very pleasant in texture. So you're just looking to warm them up a little bit and absorb some of that flavor from the stock. And once it's done, you're ready to serve. Garnish with some thinly sliced spring onions and some sesame seeds. And your beautiful meal of Korean tteokbokki is ready. When these little rice paper sheet rolls are cooked well and not overcooked, they have the most beautiful chewy texture, almost like a thick, juicy rice noodle. I must admit, I prefer these rice paper sheet cakes to the actual rice cakes that are used for this recipe. For our next recipe, I'm going to show you how I make the Japanese-inspired okonomiyaki. And okonomiyaki is mainly a cabbage pancake that's made lots of different ways. The whole idea is you use up and add in things that you like, and I'm going to show you my favorite way to cook these up today. This is my take on a vegan okonomiyaki. To start off, you're going to need the most important or essential part of this okonomiyaki is cabbage. I'm just going to dice up some cabbage into little cubes like you can see here. You're looking for smallish pieces. You don't want to finely shred it. You want the cabbage to still have a little bite. You're going to need about 2 cups of chopped cabbage in all. Next, we're going to cut up 1 spring onion. We're just going to slice this really thinly. Now, typically you'll see shrimp or pork belly added to an okonomiyaki. We're going to use some shiitake mushrooms today. And I'm just going to chop these up into little pieces. I'm using about 3 mushrooms today, and this is plenty. Next, we're going to make the batter. For this, into a large bowl, we're going to add 1.25 cups of all-purpose flour or plain flour. To whip up the batter, you're going to need 1 cup of stock. Mushroom stock is my stock of choice. Since I don't have that on hand, I'm going to actually make an instant sort of version. I've added half a teaspoon of some vegetable stock powder. If you're using liquid stock, just leave this out. We're going to add in some salt to taste. The stock I'm using is not very salty, so I've added about half a teaspoon of salt. Just adjust the amount of salt that you're using depending on the stock that you're using. Half a teaspoon of baking powder, some red chili flakes to taste. And you're going to start off by whisking these dry ingredients thoroughly. And at this stage, I'm going to add in 1 cup of water to start off with and whisk that well. Once everything's mixed through, you'll know whether or not you need to add more water. The batter that I have here is still fairly thick, so I'm going to add a couple of tablespoons of water, a tablespoon at a time, whisk it through till I get a slightly lighter batter consistency. The batter is a lot lighter like you can see here, and I'm happy with this for now, so I'm going to add in all of our chopped vegetables. And now all that's left to do is stir and mix everything through, and we're ready to start cooking. I've got my cast iron skillet warming up on a medium heat over here, and I'm going to start off by drizzling a little oil into the pan. And I'm simply going to ladle some of that pancake mix onto the pan. You're looking for a pancake that's not too thick, or else it's going to be doughy and chewy and won't cook through. So add a couple of ladles and just spread that out to be slightly on the thinner side. And you're going to let this cook away till that bottom side has developed a nice crust. I'll show you what I mean in just a moment. While our pancake's cooking, I'm going to take this time to whip up my okonomiyaki sauce. It takes just a couple of moments to put together, but is so essential to the ultimate flavor, you don't want to leave this out. You're going to start off with 2 tablespoons of tomato ketchup. To this, you're going to add 1 tablespoon of a vegan oyster sauce, half a teaspoon of soy sauce, half a teaspoon of some Worcestershire sauce, a teaspoon of maple syrup, and then you're simply going to stir everything thoroughly to mix it up well. That's your okonomiyaki sauce that we're going to add onto the pancake a little later on. Back to the pancake. You know your pancake's ready to flip when the edges look a little cooked. You'll see the pancake changes a little color around the edges, and that's a great time to check how it's doing on that side. Before I flip the pancake over, I'm just going to drizzle a tiny bit more oil on the top and carefully flip it all over. Like you can see, it's got some beautiful coloring on that side and it's cooked to perfection. Now, with your spatula, you want to make sure that all the parts of your pancake are making contact with the grill. This is a fairly thick and chunky pancake with a lot of mix-ins and fillings, so it's important to get this cooked all the way through. So that's what I'm doing here. And you're going to let the pancake continue to cook till you get a similar beautiful crust on the second side as well. Once both sides have developed some nice color and your pancake has cooked through, you're ready to finish it off. I usually get about 3 pancakes about 7 to 8 inches in diameter from this mix. And now we're at the final stage, or the most fun part. We're going to add toppings to our pancake. I'm going to start off with some vegan mayo. This is just my homemade vegan mayo. If you haven't seen that video yet, I'll leave a link to the video right on top over here and in the description box below as well. I start off by spreading some mayo all over the pancake. Next, I'm going to add some of this togarashi. This is a beautiful blend of pepper with some citrus notes. I found this at my local Asian grocery store and it adds beautiful heat and flavor to the dish. So if you can get your hands on some of this, I would highly recommend it. Next, we're going to drizzle some of our okonomiyaki sauce that we'd whipped up earlier. Onto this goes some furikake. This is just a plant-based version. If you don't have access to furikake, you can use nori sheets that you can cut into little strips and pieces and sprinkle them all over. And we're going to finish this off with a few sesame seeds. Our furikake already had some sesame seeds. I'm just going to add a little bit more because I love the flavor that it gives to the pancake. And there you have it. Your gorgeous okonomiyaki is ready. It's one of the most delicious pancakes I have ever eaten, and I really love this recipe, and I know you will too. And for the last recipe today, I'm going to show you how to whip up a killer batch of stir-fried noodles that's loaded with vegetables and some tofu as well. I've just realized that since we switched to a plant-based diet, I haven't shared any noodle recipes with you yet, so you can be sure that I'm going to add a few more recipes in the near future because I absolutely adore how easy and how versatile these kind of recipes are. This is a great recipe to use up whatever veggies you have in your fridge. It's a really quick recipe to cook up. The most involved portion of this recipe is actually prepping your veggies, and that's what we're going to start with today. I've got a bunch of snow peas here. I'm just trimming both ends down, and then I'm just going to make an angled cut to cut them into 2 pieces. The smaller, more tender ones, I'm just going to leave whole. I'm going to use 1 carrot, 1 zucchini. With my zucchini, I like to leave these slices slightly on the thicker side. Next, I'm going to chop up some broccoli, and remember you can use the stalk as well. I simply cut the stalk into little strips like this and chop the florets into little bite-sized pieces. I'm also going to use some green capsicum. You can use red, yellow, orange, whatever peppers you have on hand. Next, we're going to slice up mushrooms. I'm using 2 different types. I'm using the button mushrooms or the cup mushrooms, as well as a few portobello mushrooms. These are just baby portobello mushrooms. For our protein today, I'm using some tofu. I've got a block of firm tofu. This is just the organic firm tofu from Coles. I won't need the whole block. Just going to cut off a little bit and chop them up into little pieces. I realized that I also had a little red capsicum left over from another recipe, so I'm just going to chop that up and use that up in this stir fry today. And moving on to our aromatics, I've got an onion. I'm going to use about half an onion. To kick up the heat, I'm going to add 1 bird's eye chili, thinly sliced. And today I'm going to use 3 large cloves of garlic. We love garlic, so I don't shy away from using it in the recipe. And we're going to chop the garlic up nice and fine. For me personally, no stir fry is complete without some spring onions, so I've got about 3 spring onions here that I'm going to chop up. With our veggies all prepped, I'm going to start working on the sauce. I like to have the sauce all combined and mixed up and ready to go. I'm starting off with about 3 tablespoons of soy sauce and about 2 tablespoons of some dark soy sauce, which is not as salty as the regular one. Next, I'm going to add about 2 tablespoons of this Chinese cooking wine, 2 tablespoons of vinegar. I typically use rice wine vinegar, but I was out on this day, so I'm just using good old apple cider vinegar. And to balance it out for some sweetness, I'm going to use about 4 tablespoons of some sweet chili sauce. Now, this is a combination that we personally absolutely love in my house. I would recommend tasting the sauce and adjusting the seasonings to suit your preferences. It's meant more as a guide and a suggestion, and then you've got to tweak it to suit your liking. Now, I'm also going to add some of this gorgeous Chinese 5 spice. I've gone in with about, I'd say, half a teaspoon or so, and you're going to mix everything through till it's combined well. With all our prep work done, it's now time to start cooking. It's a great idea to have all of that prepped and ready to go because the cooking goes through super quickly. In a large wok, I've just got some neutral oil. I'm using peanut oil here today. And I'm going to start off with our tofu pieces. This is just to give them a little bit of a crust on the outside and helps them keep their shape and adds a nice texture to it as well. So I'm just going to toss the tofu around for a couple of minutes till it gets a nice light brown coloring like you can see on the edges. And I try and make sure that I get this done on all sides. But I'm not overly particular about it. Just toss it through a few times and you'll be all right. And as soon as you get that little hint of color, just take the tofu pieces out in a little bowl and set them aside. You don't want to overcook these tofu pieces. Same pan, we're going to add a tiny splash more of peanut oil and we're going to cook off our mushrooms next. Remember not to use too much oil at this stage because those mushrooms are just like a sponge. They'll just soak up as much oil as you let them soak up. At this point, I have my heat on high and I'm just going to add the mushrooms, toss them around just till they get a hint of a little bit of color on them. Next, move the mushrooms to the side of the pan, add a touch more oil, and we're going to start adding our vegetables. The first thing I'm going to add in is the onion, and I'm just going to split those layers up so that it's distributed evenly through the stir fry. And give everything a good toss. Right about now is a good time to get those noodles cooking. The noodles I'm using don't need very long for cooking. I'm just using some long life noodles. I usually find these at Kohl's. I'm using about 4 of these cakes. We're making 4 portions, 2 for dinner right now, and I'm going to have 2 adult portions as leftovers for the next day. So get these on the boil and we'll continue with our stir fry. You'll notice that the onions have started developing a little color, and now's the perfect time to add in your capsicums. Toss them through as well. And from here on, you're going to add vegetables in depending on the amount of time they need to cook. So the veggies that need the longest to cook will go in first. So things like the carrot are ones that I'll add next. After giving the carrots about a minute to cook through, I'm going to add the broccoli in next. At any point during the cooking process, if you find that the pan is getting a little too dry, feel free to add a tiny drizzle of oil as needed. And towards the end of the cooking process, you're going to add in the zucchini and the snow peas. Once all of the veggies have cooked to your liking, you can add the tofu back to the pan and stir it through. Lastly, I'm going to add the green portion of my spring onions to the wok, and we're now ready to add that sauce in. Give the veggies a quick toss and add in the cooked noodles. Drizzle a little bit of some sesame oil over the noodles. The consistency of the sauce will depend on the individual ingredients that you're adding to it. If it feels like the sauce is too thick and not enough to coat the noodles, I would recommend adding a tiny bit of water, maybe a tablespoon or 2 at the most. For me, this sauce works out just fine the way it is. So at this point, I'm just going to toss everything thoroughly so that that sauce is coating all the veggies and the noodles. And once everything's mixed through well, you're ready to serve. Garnish with a few sesame seeds. I like a mix of both white and black sesame seeds, some thinly sliced spring onions, and a drizzle of some sriracha sauce. And you've got yourself a super yummy veggie loaded noodle stir fry. These are perfect for weeknight meals or any time of the week really. That's it guys, that was a little roundup of some of my favorite Asian recipes. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up so I know I've got to keep making more of such kind of videos for you. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join the Aspiring Home Cook family. I've got a lot of ideas that I'm hoping to share on the channel really soon, so stay tuned for that. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'll see you really soon in the next one. Till then, take care. Bye.